Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, something special. We're going to have a new update for Patreon in 2018. So this was something I was just going to plan for just the folks on Patreon, but the more I thought about it, the more I was convinced that I should publicize this to all of you, especially as there's a whole bunch of you who are new to this channel thanks to the year-end list bringing you in, and you might not have a clear idea of how I run this ship. Plus, I've got a few special announcements that I may have teased a little on Twitter, but I still think might attract some of your attention. So, Patreon. I'll be very honest, when I started just over a year ago, I was extremely hesitant whether anybody would be invested enough in my reviews in order to contribute. And yet, there's been a whole crew of you from the very beginning who have been actively engaged, requesting albums and movies and even a few top 10 lists. And yes, there's another one of those coming shortly. Stay tuned for it. We're going way back for that one. And while it has been far from perfect in getting all the kinks out of my schedule and that structure ironed out, overall I think we've managed to find something that's a little bit stable, with the $1 tier for voters, $2 tier for album requests, $5 tier for movie requests, and the $15 tier for those top 10s. Now, these tiers are set per video, mostly because I believe in direct accountability for any of the content that I produce, but also given the current climate, I definitely understand how that could be a tough sell, especially given my release schedule. So I want to mention, if you want to get involved at any specific tier, you can set a cap on how much is contributed per month and still get involved in the request and the voting process, and hell, I'd be thrilled if you would. But what about that process with all of its tiers and voting rules? Well, I'll admit it took a while to really hammer things out, but I think I've got something that satisfies pretty much everything we're looking for. The top tier is for upcoming or new releases the week that they come out. The tier below it is for releases that dropped in the previous 2 weeks, and the tier at the very bottom is for those that are even older than that. Every Thursday, the tiers will rotate and shuffle some of the older releases downward, but not to worry, every voting session, Tuesday and Thursday evening and Saturday afternoon Eastern Standard Time, you can vote for one record in each tier to rise up that list. And the album at the top that gets the majority rise up towards a special elevated list and cannot fall back on rotation. And once per week, regardless of the new releases that come out, I will cover the top album in that elevated list. Now, for example, new albums, they tend to drop on Friday, so if something comes out tomorrow on January 5th, it will have until January 11th before it gets rotated down, but if it gets the majority of votes at the top of that tier when it rotates down, it can rise into the elevated list, and presuming it gets to the top of that list, I will have to cover it. Now, there are a few other rules that go along with the schedule. If you add a record or a movie on a Saturday to any tier, you can't vote in the same tier. If you're adding a record to the tier, the lyrics must be publicly available, even if they are in a different language. Or if you add a top 10 list, it immediately goes to the bottom of the schedule because they require a ton of work and I need time to refine and script and edit the damn things. But really, it'll be better off you see it all in action, which is why for my first announcement starting in 2018, I will be posting a full screenshot of my schedule at the end of each voting cycle to my Instagram Spectrum Pulse, where you can all see it play out. Now for me, a big part of this is transparency. I want all of you to understand how my process and how the voting will go, and where and how things are actually moving. Plus it'll let me get some use out of my Instagram beyond like Symbol and any new records that Voltorb over here picks up for me. But anybody involved in my schedule in the voting process probably remembers that unfortunate backlog that I accumulated very quickly and couldn't really get rid of throughout the year. Like it or not, I can't cover everything. I'm only human. And even though I reviewed more albums in 2017 than ever before, well over 200, I still wound up with dozens of records I just could not get through. And that's not even touching on the fact that I restricted my list to just albums, not EPs or mixtapes. And even then, I often found myself with records at the top of my schedule for which I just didn't have a lot to say. And those always make for dispiriting reviews, especially when they come at the expense of reviews that might be more interesting or popular on this channel, could help grow things, but end up getting lost in the shuffle because I only have so much time. And thus, for the second major change and announcement, like Anthony Fantano before me with Why You Know Review, I'm going to be introducing a monthly segment where if there are records that don't really warrant a full review, if I don't have the full material, they will be covered in aggregate aggregate at the end of the month. The debut of the series will begin with knocking through a bunch of albums added to my short list in 2017, and appropriately for a channel called Spectrum Pulse, really just a physics reference, it will be called The Trailing Edge. And for this segment, I will be much more aggressive in my schedule adding records to it. I don't want to let my backlog nearly get as big as last year, and this will be my way of correcting to that. And thus at the same time, I think it's only fair that I remove the restriction on just albums. If you have a mixtape or an EP that you want to add to your schedule, and those indie artists who want to keep sending me emails, this is the way to get on board, go right ahead. Just keep in mind, if I don't have enough to say in a full review, it will probably wind up on The Trailing Edge. And this leads to the biggest announcement of all, and arguably the most ambitious project I will have tackled on this channel, not counting Billboard Breakdown. See, a bunch of you had asked why I don't review older albums or classic albums, and while I do have my own unique set of 10 out of 10 releases that I might discuss at length in the future at some point, I've always considered this series a bit of a learning process for me, a chance to delve into musical genres of which I'm not entirely familiar, and even as I have done so over the past couple of years just through the course of regular reviews, I often find that I might not have the complete historical context of the musical subgenre, or there's just a subgenre I haven't had the chance to really delve into at length to find stuff I like or dislike, which doesn't help me if I'm claiming to be an expert in any way in my criticism. And hell, I know that some of you have come to this channel specifically as an opportunity to discover or learn about music, both young and old. So why not aim to discover something at length, in depth together? So, starting this month, I will be launching a series where once a month, for an entire year, I will be exploring a single album branded as a classic in one specific genre that I'm looking to explore. 12 records, all in one genre, once a month throughout the year, something I dearly hope will be as comprehensive as a genre exploration as I can muster on my schedule. But what genre to pick for this new series? Well, that's where Patreon comes in, because not only will you patrons have the choice to vote on the order of the classics on this list, but it's also a place where you can suggest a few yourself. And it's also the place where I will have placed a poll for patrons to vote on which genre is for this inaugural year. And the choices are as follows: 70s outlaw country, 80s hardcore punk, 90s second wave black metal, 2000s underground hip hop, and, okay fine, K-pop. Now keep in mind this series is not intended to canonize classics of the genre so much as it is learning an expedition here. Discover what works and holds up for me personally and what deserves to be left in the sands of time. In other words, this series, it's called Resonators. So yeah, a lot here between my Billboard Breakdown series weekly, my regular schedule of reviews, and my 2 monthly series. I'll be keeping plenty busy. But if you know me and the 1,000+ videos I've posted since 2013, you know I'm capable of moving out a lot of content. But still, I want to be accountable for you so you can hold me to that. And of course, not all this will be for you. I know some of you are only here for the year-end reviews and Billboard Breakdown and only the most popular of my album reviews. But for me, part of my goal in 2018 is to further refine my knowledge base as a critic and grow more in this category. And that means absorbing more and pushing even further out of my comfort zone. If you don't want to contribute or you can't contribute to Patreon, I understand. All this content will still be available on this channel for your full viewing pleasure. Nothing's going to be restricted. But if you'd like to contribute to Patreon and get actively involved in that process, I really will be incredibly grateful for all of your support. So with all of that, there's a lot of work for me to do in 2018. The schedule will officially reopen on January 6, 2018 in the afternoon, and I'll see you all then. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.